Harvington Hall, you walk in and you have just stepped back into Elizabeth's reign, just like that. Really, the decade of this house being built is the worst time to be a Catholic.
Hi everybody, I've come to Harvington Hall in Worcestershire to speak to house manager Phil Downing about the house itself, but also the challenges that they're facing trying to keep a historic house in working order. So, hi, thank
Hello,
you for chatting
welcome to
me.
Harvington Hall.
Thank you very much, it's beautiful. Tell people more about what makes Harvington so special, because you've got some things that are just, well, unique, but they're such a it's sort of like a time capsule, so you've got a few examples of things.
Yeah, so Harvington is a unique Elizabethan house. There is I'm probably biased, but there is no other house in England like this one, for the simple fact we have 7 remaining priest hides, which is more than any other house in England. As you know, when we walk around, a lot of the panelling is still original floorboards, which is a very strange thing to find, but the wall paintings, literally, as you know, we get up onto the higher floors and literally there are wall paintings on every inch of the wall. Yeah. And it's, as you say, it's like walking straight back into the Elizabethan period. Something I always say, you go into a historic house, you see it from the outside and you see this lovely old house, and when you get in, unfortunately you start looking at sort of Edwardian, Victorian and Georgian furniture, and you have to try and strip back the layers. But Harvington Hall, you walk in and you have just stepped back into Elizabeth's reign, just like that. So yeah.
So when was the house built?
So the house, we've actually got 2 phases, well, a few phases, but the block that's behind us here, this is a 14th century house, but the house that we now see today started being built in 1578 onwards. Okay. So predominantly Elizabethan. We do have medieval, and we have a Georgian side to me here. The bricks aren't Georgian, but interior is Georgian.
Let's explain to people what was going on when this house was built, and then how it ended up with so many priest hides. So we're in the reign of Elizabeth. We're actually coming toward the end, well, sort of the second half of her reign, aren't we? Where the Catholic threat from Europe is gathering. So the house was built slightly before, about a decade before we had the Spanish Armada and Mary Queen of Scots was executed. Can you explain a bit about what was going on at that time and why priest hides were necessary?
Yeah, of course. So by this point, so 1578, Elizabeth has already been excommunicated by Pope Pius V. So, of course, he's basically cut her off from Catholic Europe. And then you start seeing a series of plots. You have the seminary priests start arriving in England in the 1570s. By 1580, so the house is now under construction, the Jesuit priests arrive from abroad, and these are the ones that the government are really scared of, because these are more the enthusiast priests. These are the ones that are they're young. It's hard to say without sort of saying they're radical, because I don't believe they are. They're more what's the terminology?
Fervent?
Yeah, a bit more, they have an extra allegiance to the Pope, so they're a lot more dedicated, well, if that's the right word, but they're very kind of dedicated, and they're the ones that they're getting, the government are worried about. And then you start finding priest hides are starting to be built from about 1588, so the Spanish Armada. Really, the decade of this house being built is the worst time to be a Catholic, because you have the Throckmorton plot of 1583, you had the Babington plot, Mary Queen of Scots was executed, and then you have the Armada. So it's a really dangerous time when the house is being built, and at that point, of course, you start building priest hides.
So you've done something rather mad in
Yes.
the past by spending some time in one of the priest hides. Now, you spent a significant time in the priest hide. Do you want to tell us a bit more about what you did?
Yes, so stupidly, and I say stupidly, I spent 24 hours in a priest hide, replicating it exactly as it would have been. So there's literally no mobile phone, a bottle of water, a loaf of bread, an apple, and a piss pot, and that's basically all I had. Pitch black.
Pitch black, and what was it like?
Very dark, very dusty, and an experience I said I'll never do again. However,
There's a big but.
There's a big but. I've decided to do 36 hours in a different hide.
Wow. Okay. So which hide did you do it in the first time?
So originally I went under the stairs, which was a nice size. It's 5'9" in length, 5 foot wide and 6 foot high. This one is 8 foot long, 3 foot wide and 5 foot high.
Now this is the one that's it's probably, if you've ever looked at pictures of Harvington Hall, it's probably the more famous one because it's got the really interesting door,
yes.
the pivoting beam. So you've got to squeeze through that ridiculously small space.
I'm thin enough, I'm all right.
You'll be even thinner by the time you get out of it. And then so at the moment there's actually a window, isn't there, so you can see into it from the stairway. So that's going to be
That's going to be blacked out, so there'll be something in front of it. And where the beam sits, it doesn't sit flush to the wall anymore, where there's gaps around the side, so all of that will be filled in.
So you're going to be in
complete pitch black, yeah.
Pitch black for 36 hours.
Yeah.
I hope you know where you put your piss pot.
Well, you say that. On the last one, I actually missed it when I was having a wee. So, yeah, you've got to be careful because it's so dark.
Now, the last one, though, you also did spend it with one of those freaky mannequins.
Yeah. So Brother Leo, we call him, and he's basically there for the whole time praying on his knees. And thankfully, he didn't move.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
I think my mind would have played tricks on me, and I would have either befriended him or thought that he'd moved. One of the two extremes. That's amazing. So what is the purpose of you doing that, though?
So this is all part of our big fundraising campaign. So as I've already said, you know, Harvington, like all historic houses, need constant work to keep them going. We aren't owned by the National Trust or the English Heritage. People think we are a wealthy house. We're not. You know, we all need money. So by doing that, it's going to, firstly, hopefully raise the profile of Harvington. It will make people aware of Harvington, and hopefully see that, you know, we need money to carry on doing what we're doing. So that's really why I'm doing it.
Excellent. You were talking to me earlier about ideas for sort of how to present the house a bit differently from what it has been done before. So do you want to tell us a bit more?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, I mean, it's a Catholic household. It has the priest sides. It has all of that. But for me personally, you know, over the years, it hasn't really had that portrayed the story of the Catholic family. You know, the Recusant family. So the Recusants are the people that refuse to attend the Church of England service. These are just some, you know, 99.9% of them are good, loyal subjects to the Queen. And history is always written by the victors, and we always see Elizabeth I as this, you know, Gloriana, the Virgin Queen, and that she was always tolerant when actually she wasn't. So I want to show that story of how hard it really was for normal, nice Catholic families like the Packingtons of Harvington Hall, and seeing how it progresses until we end up with the gunpowder plot and how that all came about. Because, you know, history always tells us of Guy Fawkes and the gunpowder plot, but we don't really know how it got to that stage. And by coming to a place like Harvington, hopefully you will see that story unfold and see how we got to where we did.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really interesting for its story, for the context, the time that we were in, but the original features are what always fascinates me, because I think Owen Emerson talks about it being, you know, you're separated by time but not space. So when you're coming into contact with the wall paintings that you've got, and you know, you're saying you've got original floorboards, so you're actually stepping on the same floorboards. It's only time then that separates you from the people who lived here, who, you know, took their life in their hands by visiting here. Mm-hmm. The two chapels, so there's a large chapel and there's a small chapel. And do you want to explain how come there's two chapels in one house? Yeah,
of course. So this is purely, I don't think there's an actual explanation here at the Hall. I don't know if there's anything written down. It's only through my own research, really. So Father John Gerard was a Jesuit priest who escaped England and wrote an autobiography. And his autobiography tells us so much about what was actually happening at that time. And he says in that book, that the autobiography, that wealthy Catholics were allowed to have their own private chapel in their houses, subject to going to the Church of England service 4 times a year and reading out of a Church of England Bible, so an English Bible, not a Latin one. So we do have a small chapel. It would have been private for Humphrey Packington and the family, but we have the larger one. We have ducks as well, as you probably noticed. The larger one wouldn't have looked like a chapel. It would have been disguised of some kind, and that's basically going to be encouraging the local Catholics to come and hear Mass in the house. Right. And in between the two chapels you have a nursery, but we didn't have that many children ever living here at Harvington, so that is actually a space for an overflow for the chapel. So you have the main family in the chapel, and then you probably have the locals out in the nursery itself. Because in the nursery there are windows nearly all the way around the room. Because of course when Mass is being said, which is illegal of course, you have someone at the windows. looking out.
Looking out. There are actually quite a lot of windows in this house.
Yeah.
Is that part of the reason?
Part of the reason.
Needs to have a look out.
Well, the other thing is it's showing wealth as well, because of course you think of Hardwick Hall, which is more glass than wall.
Yes.
You know, best of Hardwick's house. So, effectively having so many windows,
it's a bit of a...
It's a status thing.
The
Elizabethan,
right.
I always say the Elizabethan period is the period of showing off. This is where we start seeing elaborate portraits and the clothing and the ruffs and all of that, and your houses as well.
So in the small chapel, you've got really vivid, one of the vivid examples of some of the wall paintings. Not the prettiest of your wall paintings, but do you want to explain what's there and sort of...
Yeah, of course. So if you're a visitor now, you look in that room and you basically see red and white droplets. And they're representing blood and water, which is the Passion of Christ. So clearly a religious statement going on the walls there by having that on the walls. But it literally goes the whole way around, as you would have seen, even on the timber as well. So you've got the timbers in there, and you can still see that they've painted it onto the timber as well.
It is absolutely covered.
Yeah.
I'll put a picture in. But they're very vivid. But then explain the ones in the you've got Mermaid Passage, and you've got the Nine Worthies Passage. So can you explain a bit about what we've got?
Yeah, so you've got two separate types of wall paintings going on. So you've got the Mermaid Passage, which continues up the Newell staircase, which is the spiral staircase that starts from the ground floor right up into the attics. And that is in what we call an arabesque style. So it's very much mermaids. We've got two-tailed mermaid on the wall, as I call the original Starbucks. You've got foliage, you've got animals, you've got all kinds of weird images. I mean, very vivid but quite strange looking images, and that literally goes all the way around the walls and underneath the staircase itself, and actually onto the treads themselves. So all of it would have once been painted. Very ornate, and we don't think for a minute it would have been an Englishman doing those wall paintings. So that would have probably been German or Flemish artists that would have come up from London. Of course, it would have cost a bit of money, and they did those paintings. You get to the top of the Newell staircase, and then you go onto the Nine Worthies Passage, which may be slightly later, possibly, wall paintings, and they're kind of life-size images, and they're things like David and Goliath, Joshua, Samson, so they're very much biblical themes. And then you also have the classics, so you've got like Hercules, Pompeii on the walls as well. There's a small section of Guy of Warwick as well. So it's just everywhere you look, you've got wall paintings looking at you.
It must have been... everywhere was just covered, and it must have been so vivid and...
Yeah,
bright.
And when you get to the end of the Nine Worthies Passage, you arrive on the Great Staircase, and if you look around, there's some stripe wall painting. It's the stipple effect, and it's basically red, yellow, probably would have been blue, not black, and white sort of stripes, sort of crisscrossing. And again, they are the Elizabethan wall paintings. They're still brightly coloured today. So I always say if you have headaches or migraines, you avoid that part of the house like the plague, because once upon a time that would have just been a mass of colour.
Yeah. So was that kind of to countenance the lack of light inside these houses, or just because it was just fashionable? Or
just fashionable. Ducks are having a fight. It's just garish. It's just the Elizabethan. They're just so elaborate with the things that they do. They paint some very garish looking.
Was there a status symbol attached to that as well? I can afford painters to come up and do it.
Of course it is, yeah.
Right.
Instead of having plain walls, you have someone painting. You have all of your walls painted. So yeah, it's a show-off thing, definitely.
Right, so if anyone is watching who wants to help out with Harvington Hall, because we're going to need to help you out with this a little bit. We all want these places to still be here. Past when we're here, let's give something for the future as well. So where can people find details about where they can donate, and especially sponsor you for this horrendous thing you're going to do, of spending 36 hours in a dark priest hole? Please.
So main places really is our website, so harvingtonhall.co.uk, and our Facebook page as well. So it'll be pinned to the top of the Facebook page, so you'll be able to hear all about what's going on, how you can donate. And there'll be places like Twitter and Instagram. So any kind of social media channel, just look for Harvington Hall and you'll find us. As I say, literally, even if it's £1, every little helps. And it's my mission, and I'm determined. By the time I'm dead, they're going to carry me out in a box out of this house, and it's not going to fall down on my watch. That's what I'm. My determination. It's going to thrive and be better than it ever has before.
Awesome. Well, I'm here to support whenever.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for today.
No problem.
It's been great.
Thanks for coming.